Sunday service. I'm gonna get more of these as my mother and sister have different obligations on Sunday. They're in conference in Las Vegas, so we'll pray for traveling mercies for them. I'm gonna get my live stream set up here, so give me a second before you officially start. And we'll say we are recording here, and we're also gonna be recording live. So if you want to share something, or you want us to kind of pause the recording, we can totally pause the recording for you. Just give us a second before you share. And when you do share, just kind of use either say it in ways that people can't trace back to the individual if you're not phrase it that way. And if you accidentally slip and say something, just say it real fast. Like I have a 2-minute delay on the live stream, and I can always edit it out of our other ones. Just let us know. We just want to make sure you all are all aware of the documentation that's taking place, and it's really for the many college students and individuals that are not able to be here and participate either way. So, and Bryce, if you could get a timer going for an hour once I get started, that'd be great. So I'd be accurate to 1 hour for our lesson. I'm gonna send out a quick little text to everybody that's watching live stream, letting know it's here. Just give me a second. Davenport's here, it's good. So you'll get a text, but just gotta ignore it. Good to see you guys. If you would like to be on the texting group text of the live stream, just let me know. I will add you to it. If you're not going to be here, just text me and I'll send you a live stream a link to the live stream. I do recommend that you have unlimited internet or on a Wi-Fi system because it takes a lot of data to watch video live. So just kind of give you that heads up on that. For those that have Bibles, if we can look up a couple of scriptures right off the bat, just before we get started. We're going to be rereading Philippians 2 and 3 through 16. And we're going to also be reading 1 Corinthians 12 and 25 through 27. Cool. So one of the things I want to rehash is that the title of this lesson will be going on for 4 weeks. And Wednesday prayer meeting, we're going to wrap it up. We're not going to have Wednesday prayer meeting this Wednesday, so this is the last service this week. And so one of the things that we're talking about here is how to build community. And what does that mean, the scriptures that back that up, and all the value in building a community. And so this is kind of a conversation. We want to be able to talk and answer questions and get feedback from the audience. It's not just me talking. Hopefully I can kind of remind myself to ask questions, get space for feedback. Sometimes I get carried away and excited and talk the entire time. But I really want to hear your feedback and your experiences as part of this process. So one of the things I'll do real fast, kind of rehash for those that have not been part of this lesson from the beginning, so they kind of understand what this lesson is about, building community. So the idea of what is community? We looked also in Romans. This is not what you have to look up. This is what we read before. We looked in Romans 12 and 3 through 13. We also read in Galatians 6 and 2. And actually, we'll read Galatians again real quickly. If you can get Galatians 6 and 2, bearing one another's challenges. We talked about bearing one another's burdens in Galatians. I think it's really critical. We talked about how we can bear each other's burdens, how in a group, is not, when you hear someone's stresses, we don't spread the rumors. We bear them. And bear them means you keep it to yourself and you allow God and you to pray for them. It's not helping someone to hear someone's burdens and you go, oh, did you hear what they said in prayer requests? And you spread a rumor. That's not bearing someone. That's something else. So that's not building community. That divides people. It hurts people's feelings because people share things not wanting everyone to know about it. If I say I have a certain sickness or a financial challenge and I share it during my prayer request in church, I shouldn't see that on Facebook next week. I shouldn't see that in a conversation over the at work. It should stay with us when we're bearing the burden. Talked about that and the criticalness of building community. We also talked about a healthy person creates a healthy family, creates a healthy church, which creates a healthy community. And we stack them up that way. So it doesn't quite stack up as well if somebody is very toxic as an individual, hasn't worked with God in their heart, they aren't saved, and they get into a relationship and they create a family, and then that family kind of is going to become lopsided and unhealthy, and then they come to join a church, they're going to bring toxicity to that environment. Now, that doesn't mean that God can heal that, but the ideal situation is if you're not married, if you're not in building a family yet, that you want to make sure that you're working on yourself because you're kind of that first building block of building community from scratch, from the ground up. So that was the math problem we gave ourselves. One healthy person equals a healthy family, equals a healthy church, equals a healthy community, and you can stack that all the way up to the world. Country, state, region, how you want to look at it, makes it to the world. So that's how the kind of value structure of the community. And then we kind of talked about our emotional state. The last 2 Wednesdays, I talked about how we handle ourselves emotionally. And we talked about forgiveness last Wednesday. So God said he wants us to forgive us. He forgives us instantly. If we go down and say, God, I'm so sorry for my sin, it doesn't take 3 days for that request to download, right, to process. It's instantaneous. Right when we ask for forgiveness, God gives it to us instantaneous. Now, I understand it's harder to translate that over to us as human beings, right? Because when someone wrongs us, sometimes it takes us a little bit of time to I forgive you. Or we say it, I forgive you. What do you say? Some buffering. I forgive you, but in our heart, we're still really hurt. We're still not quite let it go yet. Forgiveness is something we can't just brush over. It's a huge topic, right? And I love children because I know children, I've seen children get hit and they go, ah! They get upset. And I'm sorry, Trey. He's like, what's going on? Ah! And then 5 minutes later, they're playing, they forgot it. As we get older, it doesn't go away as quick, right? We're still kind of frustrated. We're still kind of upset. We're still kind of holding on to things. So God is asking us, not that we can't, if it takes a while to forgive, that we're all of a sudden just never going to be able to recover. But the idea is our goal is to be able to be, as I was last Wednesday, to be in a place to where if someone says, I need you to forgive me, and say, I already forgave you before you open your mouth. You can finish the sentence, but you're already forgiven. Instantaneous forgiveness, right? And it moved my heart because I remember I still go back to that shooting of the church. A gentleman came in and shot and killed 9 people. And at his court hearing, the woman that said, I forgive you, right? I forgive you for what you've done. And her voice, really beyond the powerful words, what she said was, you can come on back to the church. You need some church, right? You need some prayer. You can come on back. You killed 9 of us. People we loved and were devastated, but I forgive you. It gave me chills to think that she had that kind of grace, that kind of understanding. And you see the comments on the YouTube video or on Facebook, I don't understand. I don't understand what she's forgiven. I don't understand. I don't get it. And they won't get it. But you know what she was doing in my translation? She was building community. She was making sure that we can be together, even though it's a sacrifice, right? Even though people were being hurt and killed, she wouldn't recommend that happening. But if she thought, I'm going to give violence for violence, that's not building community, right? You know, old scripture, people always think misquoted. One of the most misquoted scriptures is you hear, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, or whatever. They kind of just throw it out there. They kind of stop, Old Testament, right? They say, yeah, the Bible said, fight for fight. You hurt me, I hurt you. How do we grow, right? And one person says, I don't build conflict, but if you get angry, I'll get angry. And if you elevate it, I'll elevate with you. I'll match your craziness, right? I'll match it, right? I'm like, that's not really building community. Someone has to give, otherwise you just accelerate to death, right? To self-destruction. That's not building community, right? So the idea is that remember when Jesus was getting arrested, and there was trouble, right? They're about to hurt him. They knew they were about to hurt him. And what happened? One of the type pulls out a sword, right? Cuts off the guy's ear. I still don't know why he cut off his ear. I have theories as a child. He swung his sword. Why was he swinging downward? Why did he get his shoulder? I'm always trying to figure out how the sword was swung. And I have this theory. This is Solomon Aaron's theory. I've been thinking about this for 20 years. Is that he had a helmet on. Usually a helmet to come down, the ears kind of pop. I think maybe he swiped his helmet and nicked his ear. That's what happened. I don't know. Ear was cut off. And Jesus picks up the man's ear, right? He's about to hurt him. And puts it back on his head. I don't know. This just seems like intense stuff. But what Jesus was doing right there, what was he doing? He was building community, right? The woman at the well said, all these laws say we can't talk to each other, and you believe this. And what was he trying to do? He was building community with that woman. He said there's a lot of things to say because of our race or our gender, our religion, our demographics, that we shouldn't be able to communicate. And we shouldn't be able to do this. And a long story short, we don't have time for this lesson to get into that story, but what happened in that area with that woman at the well? They built a church right there, right? And some people might say, well, she was a loose woman. She had multiple husbands. She was dysfunctional. God said, I am trying to build community.
Amen.
I'm not trying to judge her. I'm trying to heal her, right? So sometimes we'll walk down the street. I remember I was in Seattle, Washington, and we see all the prostitutes on the road, and we're like, oh my goodness, all the prostitutes. Your gut response for me, I should say, for me was like, oh my goodness, right? But Jesus says we're here to build community. We're not here to judge people and to say this is here to bring people together, right? So I won't get too far off on that. We have some scriptures we call, but we talked about the kind of idea of forgiveness and building community and the value of it. And one thing I want to mention too is that we have this idea called this new kind of sensation. I say new in the last probably 50 years. This sensation called the mega church, right? And I'm not here to critique the mega church, but you heard this movement with the mega church come in called small groups. And the reason they have small groups is because the large building, you can come to church every Sunday and sit next to a stranger in theory and not know them. And there's no sense of community, right? There's no real benefit of actually helping you personally with your needs. You couldn't go and talk to the pastor because it wasn't a community. He had to make an appointment. He may, bless you with his presence once a year because it's 400 or 500 of us. It's up to 1,000 of you all. There's no way one pastor can minister individually to 1,000 people. He doesn't even know everyone's name, right? So they have this small group idea that you can meet once a week with a small 5 or 6 people. That you can have the intimate experience that you don't get at church, right? Well, I feel like in order for us to understand the power of community is that anytime it's a revolution, anytime it's a building of anything, it's only a small group of people that does it anyway. The rest is kind of follow the process, right? So the idea is that when we're building community, let's not be intimidated because it's only 3 or 4 of us. You know what I'm saying? Don't be intimidated because they have so much economical power. One of the benefits of a mega church is the economical power. It can leverage things. But as far as building you up individually, it's limited in what it can do. That's why they created that kind of intimate structure. So the idea is that when we're building a community, let's not think about a lot of people. And at the end of this lesson, I'm going to talk about how we can do some action points, things that we can do today to hopefully we can start building community tomorrow in a way maybe we haven't tried, or we can experiment with it and see how it can be built. So we talked about that idea of forgiveness as being a part of it, and the idea of Jesus being able to forgive individuals because he had a vision of understanding a community had to be built for thousands of years. In order to happen, it's so funny because I was at a little bunny trail here. I was at a Bible study at Chaffey Junior College, and we had a small group of maybe 20 young people, which actually I thought was small. That's such a large group for a junior college, and we met. And this pastor came in from another church. He came in the name of the church. I can't remember even his name, but I remember he said his whole lesson. He said, "We always ask God to grow our numbers and to make our church bigger. And that's not really a bad idea because you want to spread and impact a lot of people." He said, "But Jesus' church was 12. He had 12 members, and he did a lot of work with those 12 people, right? And even one forsaked him, right? Stabbed him in the back. So he had 11 faithful, one forsaked him, and God stabbed him in the back, undermined him. But he had 12 loyal people in his community. And so oftentimes in America, we have ideas like bigger is better, idea and methodology. Sometimes we forget that Jesus worked intimately with 12 disciples and taught them intimately. So the idea of building community doesn't have to be massive. It can be very small and kind of unique to yourself. So we called some scriptures early on. Did we have those scriptures?
Philippians 2 and what?
Philippians 3 and 16.
3 and 16?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Philippians 2, 3 through 16. I said that wrong.
Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory.
Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory. I want to pause right here because this is the motto. My family, we raised in this song. This is the motto. It's that nothing be done through strife or vainglory, right? Now, what I mean by vainglory is glory that's here on earth, right? I remember it was a Christian artist that was on tour, and he's a musician, and a friend of mine was his choreographer, and he was telling me how he would go to a church and he would put in an offering, a large amount of money, and the church would get the offering out and announce that he's here and how much he gave. He would get up, and they would give him all his praise. And that is vainglory in a sense, that he gave his offering wanting them to announce what he did in quotations, right? And I did this. My name is on the plaque. I'm not saying that your name on a plaque is bad or good. I'm saying is that's definitely only glorification for those that are here. But the greatest gifts are those that aren't being seen. But it says, we don't want you to give anything as your purpose of giving it shouldn't be vain glory, earthly glory just for my ego's sake. All right?
But in lowliness of mind,
But lowliness of mind.
let each esteem other better than themselves.
Okay, let's pause for a second. We're talking about building community. If we esteem each other better than ourselves, that is a great nest, I'll call it, to build community. It's hard to walk into an environment and everyone's like, oh, who's this person, this new person? Oh, don't come in my house. Your shoes are dirty. You have your shoes. Is that just smelling in here? What's going on? Just missing you all the time. You wouldn't feel like you're part of the community, right? You ever walked in someone's home and maybe it was a small home, maybe it was large, but you walked and you felt welcomed. They served you food. You almost eating stuff. You know you're hungry. It's like, I guess I'm gonna eat. I just take off your jacket, make yourself at home. They're making you. The hospitality is critical, right? If they esteem you better than each other, we're not trying to lord over anybody. We're all in this together. We're pushing everybody else forward. We're not trying to push anyone down in the process. Continue on.
Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others.
So you got to think about that. This is building community, right? This is kind of anti-American in the moment as a culture, right? Because we're not always conscious of what everyone else's needs are. We're kind of all about ourselves, right? Our families. But in building community, we have to consider everybody, right? We can't look over and go, well, that was over in the East Coast. That was horrible, happened to them. But it's not in my neighborhood. That was over in Victorville that got robbed. That wasn't in my Phelan neighborhood. That was down in San Bernardino. That was in LA. That wasn't, it's all of it. Think about others. Continue on.
Let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus.
Okay, and this is important not just because it's good. This is how Christ functioned. This is not just something we're doing because it's good. This is how Christ, this is the mind of Christ, the mind of Christ is the foundation of building community. Continue on.
Who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but he made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men.
Now, I think it's really important because oftentimes if you go to like a high school and you see a janitor that's working in the area, you go to any kind of place, the person that's buffing the tables, you see someone that's serving you food at maybe a Denny's or a restaurant of some sort. These are service positions, right? And even in the movies, we have servants. And the idea of a servant is they look down upon. Oh, you're a servant. You work for me. Don't mess with the help. You know these phrases that are all used to kind of dismiss the working class, the service class, right? And so the idea is that Jesus, which we consider our king, we consider our example, we consider someone that we really appreciate, took the form of a servant. He serves us. He supports us, right? So anytime, I remember it's a small little detour on the story because it shocked me though, kind of an aha moment for me. I was in high school choir and we always had like, this is a section leader and this person can sing really good, and people wouldn't talk to you because they were better singers, and you were in a chamber choir, you were in beginning choir, and all this kind of like high school, little pecking orders. And I remember going to this concert and hearing these professional singers singing, and at the concert, come down and chatted with me and just talked about music. I'm like, how are these professional singers more humble than people in my high school that barely got wet behind the ears when it comes to music? How is it? My brain didn't understand it. I think sometimes we, as humans, can get sometimes caught up with the idea of we're better than them. We have a nicer vehicle. We have a nicer. Why are we gonna invite them? They're all dirty. They're scuffing up the carpet. They're unruly. And Americans were also very sensitive about smell. They smell bad. They can't be good people. They take a bath. There's all these comments about the value of them. But Jesus came to us in the form of a servant. That's his example that we're able to serve. And I remember my mom would always bring water to the pastor when they're preaching. And that's one of the greatest gifts you can give, is service. The graduation dinner, she says, "You're a server. That's an honor." I'm like, what are you talking about? But it kind of sunk in after a while. When you realize when you're building community, oftentimes if you're the initial person, you're in a space of service. You're picking people up, you're driving to the location, you're paying people's gas, you're making sure they have groceries, you're serving people to build community. That's kind of that early stages. We think of like the civil rights movements and all. It's oftentimes the service that makes it happen, right? Continue on. Are we at 16 yet?
And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Wherefore God also hath highly exalted him and given him a name which is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, of things in heaven and things in earth and things under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling.
I'm going to pause right there. No, it didn't work out your neighbor's salvation. He said, work out your neighbor's salvation. No, it said, work out what? Your own. When we're building community, it's not for us to look over and go, is brother so-and-so doing it right? He's working on his salvation, what? On his own with him and God. Not that we can support each other, but be very careful about our practice, right? It's our responsibility. Early on, in that scripture, he said Jesus was exalted by God, right? So Jesus came as a servant. He just worked. He got to work, right? From turning the water into wine to hanging on the cross, Jesus worked. He just worked. He was constantly doing God's about my Father's business. Even almost defiant to his parents. He said, I'm about my Father's business. I got work to do. He got to work immediately, right? But then the question is like, who lifted him up? Who made him this Jesus that we all talk about every time? God did, right? So once you don't seek out things for vainglory, you aren't walking out for the awards, you aren't giving your offerings so everyone knows you give it. You're doing it all. Who lifts you up? God lifts you up, right? He lifts you up, and guess what? When he lifts you up, who can knock you down?
No one.
Okay? It's really significant. When God builds a community, who can break it up? No one. But we get together, I put everybody, I got my skills, I got my little internet marketing, I got my handsome face on, I got my marketing skills out, I got my sign, my big building. And one scandal undermines the entire situation, right? One bad publicity video undermines everything, right? One mistake by a leader that was going by vainglory undermines everything. But when God builds something, no man can tear it down. That's the community we're talking about. I don't care if it's 8 people versus 1,000 people. If God built that 8 people, right, no man can tear it down. Now, I'll make that clear. That means atomic warheads. That means weapons of mass destruction cannot break that community. It cannot destroy that environment, right? And so when we think about building community, understand you're not building it. You're kind of a service in it and a vessel, but God's the one that sticks it all together. He's kind of the clay in the plaster. That's kind of weird, but he's kind of the bonding material. And clay is very bonding. Every touch clay is sticky. It's really sticky. I'm really a fan of clay right now, so it's kind of in my brain. But it's the bonding material. Yeah, Trent, it's sticky, exactly. Give me a little hand. And so the idea of what it makes to build community, this is kind of the structure we have. So hopefully we can go into thinking about that. I want to pause for a second before we go to the next scripture and ask a couple of questions for us. What community have you seen built by God? What community have you seen built by God? Right? Anyone want to share a community they witnessed, they saw? It could be a small community, it could be a large one, but a community that God had his hand in building. Oh, everyone. Okay, she says everyone. Everyone. That's a good point. On a basic terms. A community you've seen that God had his hand in building. Yes, Uncle Ed?
Our family.
Our family. Your family? Yes. Your mom and your dad, that goes right in the family. All right? Anyone else see a yes, Bryce?
I think of the story of Job because, he had children, he had a whole community in of himself. Mm-hmm. It was taken down pretty low.
Yeah.
But it didn't go away.
It didn't.
And I think, I think that's a great example of a community that God put together that was under stress and then still continued to flourish.
You bring up a very good point. I didn't bring up Job this time for the record. I bring up Job almost every single lesson, but this is a critical point, is that Job was wealthy. We talked about what God built. And it's so great because, mythology or not, I'm going to look at how it looks like a fake story when you talk about all the things he lost in one day. And I think, though, people on this earth can tell you they've lost everything in one day. They've lost it that quick. The digital age for me as a photographer, back in the day, we used to make films and all that. Nowadays, you lose a hard drive, you can lose thousands of images in a couple of seconds. Like you drop it, bam, literally it's gone if you don't have it backed up. So he had a kind of almost a digital erase of a lot of his heritage, his family. But what's so beautiful is after everything was that was material taken away from Jesus, taken away from Job, what did he say he had? He said, naked I came into this world, naked I shall leave. Right? He had a clear understanding that all he ever had was his soul. That was the most important building block he ever had. And from those ashes of his sickness and his wife saying forsake, his children were passed on, from that moment and that little bit left, he built himself back up again, even bigger, right? And that's because he understood how to build a community. Got shrunken down. So some communities get attacked and they don't get destroyed. Why don't get destroyed? There's still smoking. There's still a smoking flask in there, and they can start up another fight up again. So, Bryce, very good. Job is a community that God built, and the devil tried to destroy, but could not completely destroy it and turn it not into another bigger movement, bigger community. Anyone else want to tell a story? It could be a story in the Bible, it could be a personal story, it could be something you witnessed locally, but a community that was built by God, or a country that was built by God, or an area.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
The question is, have you witnessed or seen a community that was built by God? We got one here, but we'll give a chance for one other person. We'll get to you. We'll get you in a second. A community that was built by God.
Well, I don't know my history as well as I should, but I know that there's a place or places, in the Middle East, in the Holy Land, where Scripture talks about there will always be, strife. But like you're saying, like what Bryce just said, that's still not enough. Even war doesn't take the community down to nothing, so that it cannot continue. It will continue. It will flourish again. And so it's incredible
Yeah.
how strong, how long these communities they last forever.
Yeah. They can. Long as earth. Jasmine? Is that it? Jasmine, go ahead. Friends. Friendships can be. Family and friends can be built by God. I want to add, yes, we have two down here. Each other. So each other's community? Yeah, that could be worked. Each other. You have good people around you. Yes.
Our teachers.
Or your teachers. Schools can be built that way. Education. I'm going to pause and add church, right? And I'm going to say church. I'm not going to talk about church eating like saints with the sign on. I'm talking about the church worldwide. We're talking about the church that's attached to every other church. People always ask, oh, you go to what church? How many members do you have? Kind of basic question. And you can say, I have 40, 20. But really, if you talk about the church, it goes well beyond this building, this land. It's all the believers that God has in his church, right? And so it's much bigger. And also, I think what's significant too is that when we think about God building it, is God said, if you don't praise, if we don't praise, the rocks will cry out. The earth will always praise, right? And so it's important that we have a constant force of communities. Another thing I want to bring up too, and you might laugh at me, but this is real, is I've seen, I'm using one example, there's billions of examples, is God built a community of ants, right? God's in ants. Our insects that we have on this planet, that's built by God. It's divine intervention. You try to ever destroy ants, you see them come right back, and they come right back, and they come right back, and then you make sure on your property, you walk 10 feet over, and the next property has them. They're on almost every continent. And I think what's important too is that there's many examples of God building biological communities that man cannot destroy. And if we did successfully destroy it, probably didn't destroy it ourselves, which is basically impossible for us to successfully destroy with self-destruction. Another question I have for you all is, what are simple steps to building a community? We've kind of gone through it a lot. I just want to get your own heart if there's something that you think of as what are simple steps to building a community. I give you the kind of math equation of a healthy person creates a healthy family, creates a healthy church. That's the community structure. So what are the steps you think of that help build family or build structure, build communities? What healthy steps we can take to build community? Now, so I'll talk about my action steps in a second. Simple steps with Bryce.
Love your brother as you love yourself.
Love your brother as you love yourself. Or love your sister as you love yourself. Now, we're assuming you're saved, you can care of yourself. Some people are like, I don't even care about myself, so I don't really care about anybody else. Okay. But we're talking about a saved person that values himself, that they can value other people as well. Right? All right. So, yes, just Dasani. Sharing? You say sharing? I'm gonna write that one down. That's huge. Sharing. I come from family of 5. I had to learn how to share. We'll talk about that in a second. Jasmine. Caring about, talking about Bryce's, brother for brother, caring about other people. Only one person, only at a time. So yes.
Making people happy.
Making people happy. Now we'll talk about happiness. Making people happy. Yes? Say it again. Ooh, actually, this is really great. Learning. An educated community gotta learn how to communicate and be a correct community. So, there's a couple things I want to pause for a second on the questions and answers I want to bring up in the steps of building community. I love lessons we use scripture. I love that we talk about how the Word of God can help us think about this. But I also want to challenge us in actually going out tonight, tomorrow, and building community. This is what I recommend. It's not something you have to do, but something I recommend if you want to just think about what we can take home from this message and use it tomorrow, tonight, in real time. And that is, when you get in a situation and you think, I want to build community, is don't think I'm going to build multiple people. I'm going to get a bunch of people together. Because what I want to encourage you to do is go out and say, I'm going to connect with one person that I currently don't already connect with and bring them into my environment. Now, we're speaking specifically about building a church community like here. We're not talking about just like your friends. We're talking about people you can bring into your spiritual practice. You can invite them into it. And so you can say, I'll pick one person, just one person. It might be someone you see in the store, it might be someone a neighbor you kind of see on a regular basis, be a friend at school. But say, I'm going to connect with one person. And I'm going to use the principles that we talked about here in our lesson for the last 3 weeks. Quick to forgive, right? Now, I think what's really beautiful is sharing. I don't know how many times you make friends in school by sharing part of your lunch. You got some ice, you want to cut a piece off and you share. It's a great conversation to start, right? Sharing your help. Maybe you have knowledge about math or science or health or something. You want to share your knowledge. Just sharing a little bit can be a critical role in you being able to build that community. Another thing I want to bring up in community building is that community building takes time. It's not something we can go out tomorrow and meet up with friends. Oh yeah, we're done. I got community built. We're all here. But community takes years, like growing a family. It takes years to build up a strong, healthy, consistent community. And the word consistent stands out because community means you have to go out to school every day, every week, and you show up. And you show up for that person. And I always talk about inviting people before the actual invitation. Now, we have here a Fivacious invitation, which I recommend I hope you all are invited to come. But this concert's been going on for almost 15 years, and here at the church, probably 10. But what's significant about this invitation is that I can't just show up today and be like, oh, want to come to my concert? That might work, it may not. Someone's not doing anything on that day. But the invitation has to come well before this is printed and given out. So when you build a community, I would encourage you, the person you're connecting with, is that I remember it was a gathering, a camp meeting years ago, and it was several young people that were there that were being ignored the entire week. And come Friday, they're like, hey, young people, want to go out to do something cool? And those 3 people that were ignored said, I don't want to go. I'm like, what? Oh, why don't you want to go? This is for the young people. Because they weren't invited the whole week. They were ignored the whole week. When we're building community, we want to make sure we're not doing that same strategy. We want to make sure that we're inviting people by a kind word, cutting our little banana in half during lunch and giving them half, and asking how the day is going, and showing up to the little gatherings they may have, and being a part of the world, and breaking bread with them at their space, and respecting them, and showing them hospitality. We talked about hospitality a couple Wednesdays ago. And then you get the invitation out, and you invite them, right? And the chance of them coming jumps 80%. This is a mistake that oftentimes we make in our action plans to come in real-time action, is they don't come, we stop talking to them. We're done. Like, you ever someone call you up to some program, you want to get $1 million tomorrow? You're like, oh, yeah. They come up to your house, they present the information to you, and they're all up in your face, and you're like, I'm kind of interested. You kind of drop off, you don't want to do it anymore. They stop talking to you completely. They don't even know your number and lost you because you're not interested anymore. Just because someone doesn't want to come the first time or the fifth time, you don't just stop talking to them. Right? Stay in contact. Stay building. That consistency happens even after they say no. It's totally okay. It's appropriate. They have the right to say no. But building community takes that kind of constant action of consistency and invitation before the actual invitation shows up. And so I have no idea who will all show up. But oftentimes we found the people we invite to these events to actually show up are the ones we've had contact with throughout the year. That over the years, we had the privilege of singing at their funerals with their loved ones. We've sang at hospital beds at their bedside. But this is all a critical part of building community, right? That we always give our 5 fishes and loaves. We have a thing that was said here about learning. I thought that was really great, and about sharing. I want to bring up those two things really fast too. Is that people have to learn how to be in community. Before, when we were in villages and structures, it was kind of in the DNA. But now in America, we call it independent. This idea of like when you get a certain age, you leave your family, you create your own community, it's all good and dandy. But sometimes we lose the idea of family, of eating dinner around a dinner table. I remember there's pictures, you might see pictures of like a dinner table, like a dad on one end, a mom on the other end, and like the kids in between, like food's in the middle. That's like Thanksgiving nowadays, and every other day of the week, for us to stop and sit down at the dinner table and have community. And the father says, daughter, how was school? And son, how was school? Challenging, right? This is a critical part of thinking about how we have to learn how to gather together. The idea that you all are physically here, and I appreciate those who are online watching, the fact you're showing up is a big action of being into this presence, right? Because that's a critical part of building community. So we have to learn sometimes, again, of how to come together, to make our schedules flexible enough that we can stop what we're doing, put down our digital devices, unplug for a second, and show up and be present. And I say show up and be present in the sense that it's one thing to show up in a building but not actually be present. It's kind of like, I'm here, but I'm still kind of disconnected. I want to make sure I'm here and present and giving good attention to help the community be placed. And I really appreciate everyone that showed up today to be a part of community, right? And it was so interesting because right now I'm archiving probably 20 years of photographs and digitizing, put them on the internet. And I can't help but stumble across like Brother Nathan when you were graduating from high school, and I think back of my mom having these graduation dinners back in the day, and I see the Davenports, and they were young, sitting right here in the front. I see Aunt Louise leading Vacation Bible School, and I remember the consistency that the Browns. What year did you guys move here to California? You remember? 92. And I feel like almost instantaneously we were in contact with you all from 92. I don't know how many years is that? Is that 23 years? So how old are you, Bryce? 28. So Bryce was like less than, it's like 8 years. Bryce was 8, 6 when they showed up. Right. Yeah, 5? Yeah. So that's when you probably remember going to the house the first time, a little house tour, and then playing basketball and all that. But that is families getting together, right? This is pre-cell phone, right? I mean, if you wanted to call somebody, my mom gave us 10 minutes on the phone to talk to somebody, and then she was back to her phone. And we had the cordless phone came out. We thought, wow, we could walk around the house without the cord. We were independent, you know? So we had to kind of show up and like play on the street. You drive down the street. I remember the Browns were playing basketball on the street, you know? And everyone else was playing. It's kind of part of the community building. Well, it's not quite the same energy today. 23 years later, we have to now carve out time to show up. To say I'm actually present, right? The things that we took for granted. I remember it was a joke that was on Facebook. It's like when the lights turn on, you gotta be home, you know? Yeah. Well, no one's out anymore. We're all already home. We're already in the house. So the idea of us coming out of the house, getting together, something to learn again. And the church is no different. When you're building a spiritual community, we have to show up physically. The scripture says, forsake not the assembling of us together. Because God knows we need to be physically present. Now, I love being online and being able to live stream, have digital recordings, but we can't forsake the physical showing up. You think about the revolutions that have happened even in America. If we said, back in the day, said they had cell phones and stuff, I'll just text in my support. I'll just like it, and hopefully the government will catch on. No, they had to get on buses and go to the Washington and march on Washington and make that physically happen. It's a physical sacrifice, right? If you want to think about building community, building your family is a great place. You can't say, I'm going to stay in my room, and I'll just call it my parenting, right? I'll call it. No, you have to physically say, stop, honey. Here's the food. Here's the taking care. It's a physical activity, right? So in our kind of building, that's where our joy comes from. Us all kind of coming together, and we can create joy. We can create that love. There's nothing better than people coming together and creating support for each other. We have one more scripture I wanted to read before we get to the end of this. We have 20 minutes left. Good. So we're going to get to, it was...
Is it the Galatians?
Yeah, Galatians.
What was it, 6 and...
I'm going to get it right now. I moved away from the screen. Galatians 6 and 2.
Bear ye one another's burdens,
Yes, we talked about this. Yes.
and so fulfill the law of Christ.
So it's not like optional to come together, hear testimonies, and not participate in feeling it. God's law asks us to bear it. He wants us to participate in other people's sorrow. He wants us to participate in other people's challenges and burdens to be a part of community. Because it's hard for me to say, like, oh, I'm part of community, but I'm not really, if someone's in pain, I'm not really invested, right? Well, whatever. That was their situation. They should have just saved more money. They should have drove safer. We have to really understand they were in a car accident. Let us support that space. Regardless of our personal opinions, we make sure we think about how we can feel each other's burdens and how we can be in a place of community in that way. And what's significant about that is that there's a fine line between bearing someone's burdens and stretching yourself out because someone else is in trouble, right? So we got an idea of like God asks for balance in all things that we do. So I want to say that because sometimes I find individuals, they're always seeking out trauma. Like you can't find a good thing about it. Well, did you hear about that guy getting on the freeway? It was horrible. Did you hear about that fire? The economy's going down. It's like they're bearing everything, but they're not bearing it in a healthy way. All is unbalanced. God is He's going to balance this bearing, right? Because we're in a community. You don't want to go to church and go in there and it's like, I was happy when I went to church. Now I'm leaving. I think the world's going to end. Fire and brimstone. I just ain't feeling good, right? The idea is we want to be lifted up in the process. And how that works is that we're not bearing our community's burdens alone. We're bearing them in community, but we're also bearing them with God's support and help, right? Whatever bombs are dropped, whatever terrorist attacks happen, whatever car accidents happen, whatever financial challenges we have in our own personal life, it's not built, bared without God saying He's the ultimate control. Job was that kind of situation, right? I mentioned Job this time. So Job was he lost everything. He literally lost everything, but he didn't bear it alone, right? He didn't say, God, I got this, right? So the idea is that we don't want to be in a place of bearing this without admitting that we need God's help to bear it, because that's going to make the community stay together and stay intact. A couple other questions I want to ask. Aww. Did we get Colossians 3 and 13? Did we get Colossians 3 and 13 about forgiving?
No.
Can we get that again? We read it last month. I want to revisit that again because I want to also get.
Colossians 3:13 says, "Forbearing one another and forgiving one another, if any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye."
The reason I want to read that is we talked about forgiving instantly, and we talked about bearing the burdens. Anytime you have people together, I don't care if it's a small group or family, there's going to be conflict, there's going to be miscommunication. And so forgiveness is like the oil in an engine. It keeps things flowing forward. We can get caught up sometimes in being holding hurts. And so one of the things that I want to mention too is that we all can think back. I think one of the young children shared one of the Wednesdays, a hurt that happened to them years ago, like a while ago. They always remember exactly what happened. They remember exactly who said it to them. And the reason is apparently is that when pain happens to young children, it stays with us, right? Just because we can remember it and it hurts us doesn't mean we didn't forgive the person, right? We can be hurt and forgive somebody that still hurts. So the challenge is making sure that we take the time to come together and heal from hurts, right? Because part of a community staying together, staying intact, staying sustainable is healing from hurts that we've gotten, right? So even though we've gotten hurt and we've actually forgiven the person, we still have to heal sometimes from the hurt. Now, part of the healing is the forgiveness. That's part of it. But I feel like there's a next step that's important that God would like us to think about in our forgiveness. Now, God has different areas. God can forgive us. He doesn't have any hurts because God is kind of beyond our level. But the idea is that I want to bring up the idea of how do we heal once we've forgiven and move past our challenges, right? So the question is that we can share, my pen here, we can share briefly, because we're almost got about 10 more minutes, share briefly of how we have healed from hurts. When you've been hurt in your family, in your job, how do you heal from it? Like the process of you get cut or something, you put a Band-Aid in, so maybe some, what other stuff you put on, the little chemical you put on there? Sporn or something, and you put a Band-Aid on, it heals it. Well, emotionally, sometimes you gotta put something on to accelerate our emotional healing. So I have many ways that I heal that I'll share, but I want you to kind of just share, if you feel comfortable, ways that you have healed. When you've been hurt, you've forgiven them, but you're still dealing with the hurt part of it. How do you heal? What are your techniques? Keziah? Crying. This is very important. Heavy one. Thank you so much. Crying out the gate. I'm so glad you said that. Brother Nathan.
You have to separate the offender from the offense.
Oh, this is critical. Separate the offender from the offense. That is critical. It's almost a lesson within itself. We're trying to touch on it in our last 10 minutes. It's huge. How else do you heal? Melissa and then Uncle Al.
Two things, because they kind of go together. One, I think about all the times that I may have hurt someone on accident, or not, horribly. And then also, I think about like, how would I treat this person if I wasn't mad at them at all? How would things be if there was no hurt between me and this other person? And then I act that way, or I try to do that.
thinking about when you've hurt someone, and if you didn't have the situation, what that be like? You didn't have that event. Tajiana. No, I'm sorry, Uncle Let, not Tajiana. It's the order I went.
Time and prayer.
Ooh, time. That's not a favorite, but a really critical one. And prayer. Tajiana.
Find at least one thing, I believe she'll do, find at least something. Yeah, I'm not sure.
She said, like, find one thing that's like a blessing of that person and focus on that. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, like if someone's like being really angry, you might think, hey, but that person's really actually trying to help their child get to their location, that's why they cut me off. Or realize that, this is find a good thing about that person and focus on it. It's really important too to help the healing process. Yes. Love and prayer. I like this comment. It's a little gathering of great love and prayer. How do we heal from hurts? Love and prayer, time. We have time for maybe one more example of healing. Yes. Say it again. Say it again. Medicine. We'll talk about medicine. That's interesting. Medicine. Say medicine. Heal from hurt from medicine. All right, so we're going to start from the top. One of the things that I think is really interesting is that I remember I was thinking, is there any way to have a relationship romantically and never argue? I mean, never have conflict, I should say. Arguing is different, but never have conflict. There has to be a way. I haven't found that way. It has to be a disagreement. I'll have if I found it, I would tell you, but I don't know the answer. But I found is that it's not necessarily that you have conflict. It's how you resolve it and how you heal from it that actually is going to be the biggest help and support. Now, here I am 3 years married, so don't take it with a grain of salt. Understand I'm still new at this process, but I've observed and witnessed the process for longer than that. But I want to kind of skip to, because of time's sake, to what Brother Nathan said as well, which is separating the offense from the offender. This kind of idea of discerning the enemy, this idea of understanding who the ultimate enemy is. It's so easy to be like, that police officer pulled me over and it was him. Jonathan, blah, blah, blah. Tag number is him. No, actually, it's not, right? That person cut me off. That person said something rude to me. And to separate that, saying, who is actually attacking us? What is the force that's actually evil force that's trying to undermine us, right? You have an answer? The devil. It's a spiritual warfare here, right? Thank you for being a part of this. This is the big part of it, right? Is we're fighting a living enemy that's not going to show up with little pointers on his head and ugly face. We have all kinds of these ugly faces early in Sunday school. But a grizzly, I'm the devil. He's going to show up, or it's going to show up, I should say, in a force that's sometimes embodied in flesh. And what Nathan's talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is understanding when the flesh is attacking you that you're not just dealing with a person in front of you, you're dealing with separating this from the devil. This is the devil attacking us, right? They may call it a terrorist attack. They may call it someone just breaking into your house. But there's an evil presence that we have to rebuke and fight. That's all connected to our spiritual practice. And I think that's critical of us being able to really conquer and build community. Because I've seen hurts dismantle families. I've seen hurts dismantle churches. I've seen hurts even disrupt governments, right? And topple them because it hasn't been dealt with properly. We had one that said time and prayer, right? I've been hurt sometimes. So I've been cutting my hand, the crease of my hand, and it hurts every time I open my hand. I was like, if this won't hurry up and heal, it's going to take forever for it to heal because I keep breaking it open every time I move my hand, and it's the worst spot to get cut anywhere on my hands where I use them a lot. Well, for me, I think about there's sometimes there are hurts that take a while to heal. They hurt in a place that we use a lot, right? Where they're hurt in a place that for example, I'll use an example. It might sound a little cryptic, but one thing that maybe we do a lot is we go amongst people and socialize in a room like this. And say we've been hurt in this way where we've gotten abused or embarrassed in front of a lot of people. So every time we go to work, school, hanging out just with friends, we're amongst people. And so because our hurt was in that way, we're constantly irritating this hurt on a regular basis. So it takes time for us to heal in that space, right? It could be hurt around food, right? It could be hurt around food, where you didn't get enough when you were growing up, or you're struggling with food, and it can be multiple challenges. And so you have to eat on a regular basis. So now you have to deal with this hurt regularly. So something that's it's like almost emotionally, it's on your hand. And one of the critical parts about that is when someone tells you it takes time to heal. And it's like, I'm dealing with this every single day. I'm in this community every single day. I'm in this church every single day, and it hurts every single Sunday, every single Wednesday. But God, and I love how I think Uncle said this. She didn't say just time. She said time and prayer. And I'll just add to prayer, which is the same thing, connection to God. You have to connect to that God force to get access to heal that thing that we're using on an everyday basis, right? Because if we don't deal with hurts, we'll tend to hurt other people. Hurt people, right? So if you're a hurt person, I'm using a dog as an example to diminish this, but if you ever have a situation, I'll have a public announcement and an example, is that time? Oh, sorry. Is that if you ever get a dog get hit by a car on the freeway and it's still alive, if you go over and try and pick the dog up and help it, what happens? It'll bite you. It could be a nice dog, but it'll bite you because it's what? It's scared, doesn't know what's going on, so be very careful. So oftentimes people can get hit emotionally, bam, really hard. And you go over to help them, guess what happens? They snap at you because they're not healed yet. They hurt you. And you hurt because you're like, I was trying to help them. And they just took all my stuff and misused me because they are hurt, right? So we must kind of go in to help, get healed to help. We have to have prayer connected to God, and that heals hurt so we don't cause a perpetuation of hurt. Does that make sense? Because that's what destroys communities. And I think what's really great here is we talked about love, right? Love and prayer. Now, we had a scripture, I don't know if it was last month, but we talked about charity and love as the greatest. You can have language of all things, you can know all things, but without love, you have nothing. Love and prayer is a critical way to heal from hurts. If we don't have love in our hearts, it's like not having, there's no way for a wound to heal. If you don't have that love in place, that's like the biggest start band-aid for that thing to take place. And you get love by asking God, reaching out to God. God can give you as much love as you want. You just keep asking, he'll keep pouring his love onto you. It's endless. And so one of the things, I know we're getting close to the end, but one of the things I want to kind of think about is we went over a lot of things over the last 4 weeks. And we had a lot of challenges in the last 4 weeks of just kind of maybe making it all make sense. But I will say this. If you can try one thing, summing this all up, try one thing in building community, is I want you to try something. Try something. Try one of the things we tried or a variation of that works for your lifestyle, because sometimes we hear a lot of information, oh, it's great. We kind of move past. But I really want to encourage us, if it's just going out and sharing some of our food with somebody, if it's simply going out and being and having a different kind of conversation with our loved ones that we already know to strengthen that, if it's going out and trying to love and use love and prayer and time to heal some of our hurts that we have, because unfortunately, we all have hurts, and use those to heal so we can be better amongst each other. We have more grace for everyone else. And I remember that, it's sometimes difficult. If your head's hurting and you're hungry, it's hard to be kind and loving. And spiritually, it's the same way. If you're spiritually starving and you're spiritually have a headache, it's hard to be gracious. It's hard to be like, oh, yeah, I can help you for the 15th time. It's like, I'm done. I can't help because I'm hurt, right? It's hard to help when you're hurt. And so for me, I just want to encourage us to try something in the community. It's worth trying, because we cannot make it as a culture. We cannot make it as a community if we aren't trying every day to build community on a regular basis. Because that's something that has to be sustainable, and it's the foundation of existing as a healthy community, is building it. It has to be built with blocks. I want to thank each one of you guys for your time. I didn't get to all my questions, but I want to just thank each one of you guys for participating, giving me good attention, and answering the questions that they were able to ask. And make sure we kind of think about maybe how this church as a small community can improve itself. I think community always needs to be improved. It's kind of examine that as a take-home message of how we can improve. And also, too, is if you think of something I didn't mention already, if you want to text it in or email it in or just tell me after church, I would love to add it to our repertoire. And if you want to kind of revisit this message, we're going to be posting it on YouTube. We have a Church of God Baltimore Mesa YouTube channel that we post all of our messages on. And we also have a live stream at livestream.com. If you want to message it, share this with somebody else, you can share this or watch it again on your own time. And obviously, if you have anything you want to have edited out of this, please let me know. I will totally edit it out for you, best of my ability. Have it edited out for you, I should say. Thank you all for your attention and time. We want to give space for testimonies and altar call. If you have it on your heart and mind where